the Oklahoma Newsroom. You're watching The Press Row. I'm Jenny Carlson here with Barry Trammell, and we're brought to you by Papa John's Pizza. You can go online anytime and order your pizza at papajohns.com. Barry, it's time for Inbox and all the questions this week about Tom Brady, the Patriots, and Deflategate. Let's get started with Scott. Scott says, Tom Brady appears to have organized the ball deflation, and we all know dang well that Bill Belichick knew about it too. They have repeatedly cheated to gain an advantage, punish them severely, and it likely will never happen again. I'm sure that's what Roger Goodell is hoping anyway.
Well, I think it is what he's hoping. I actually don't know that it'll come to pass because I think the Patriots are the very definition of arrogance. I think Scott is right. I think this is a case of the New England just being habitual cheaters and Roger Goodell saying, let's try to do something about it. But you know, arrogance that we see from the Patriots, if they weren't going to do it again, they might not have done it this time because they were punished for the Spygate. So I hope we don't see the Patriots back in the court of law of the NFL, but I'm not convinced that we won't.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. You know, here they got punished for the taping of the signals, you know, all sorts of different things over the years, always pushing the limits to try to get an advantage and sometimes going over the line because clearly this was a case of breaking the rules of the NFL. You know, I think it's a situation where maybe it's just time to say, you know, inflate the balls to whatever you want. Let the teams decide. And, you know, if they decide to do it less or do it more, whatever the quarterback wants. But the rule right now as it stands has parameters. Clearly those were violated. And I'm glad the NFL came down hard. I think it's time to, I mean, the Patriots have been obviously a very successful franchise. There's no doubt about that. But you can't have them cheating all the time, and I think the NFL's trying to put a stop to some of that. All right, back to the inbox. This one from John. He said, for the NFL to know ahead of time of potential wrongdoing prior to a playoff game and not deal with it immediately so as to not affect the game's outcome is ludicrous. It was too simple for them to impound the balls prior to the game and use properly inflated balls, play the game, and then pound on the Patriots later, all because of a quote-unquote sting.
Well, it's an interesting question because they were alerted, the Colts or somebody said, hey, something fishy's going on. But what's the NFL supposed to do? The NFL did take steps to ensure the validity of the balls. Turns out that our old pal Walt Anderson lost track of them for a couple of minutes with the Patriot equipment guy getting his hands on them. So I don't know what the NFL is supposed to do. Sometimes you have to catch people red-handed before you can figure out exactly what they're doing. So the good news about this whole thing is it was Colts, Patriots, one-sided. New England was going to win if they were playing with a baseball in that game. So it didn't matter. You know, I don't think the outcome of the game was affected one way or the other. I think the NFL's hands were tied, though.
Yeah, and you're right about the game outcome. It is a good thing that the Patriots showed themselves to be so superior to the Colts, then in the Super Bowl winning that game convincingly. You know, that sort of takes some sting away. If they'd won either of those games by narrow scores, I think there'd be a ton more uproar, and you might have seen an even bigger punishment for the Patriots. But, you know, if again, this would require a rule change, but maybe the NFL just takes over. This was a rule letting the teams have their own footballs that they control, that they inflate to the poundage that they want, that they can even condition in different ways. That was a rule that Tom Brady and Peyton Manning got enacted a few years ago. They wanted more control over those. So if the NFL's upset about that, they got to change the rule back. They've got to say, well, we're going to take full control of what these footballs are like on the field. And, you know, clearly they want to give the players some control over that, or they wouldn't have changed it. Those two guys being pretty heady in the league. So I think that they've got to, if they're going to stick with the rule as is, you know, they've got to be mindful of the fact that they might have to have a few more checks and balances in place along the way to not have this happen again. All right, back to the inbox. This one's from Chuck. Chuck says, seems to me the NFL should find themselves too. They failed to maintain control of those footballs, something you just mentioned, Barry.
Well, and, you know, I love Walt Anderson. Dealt with him a bunch as the director of Big 12 officiating. But, you know, Walt let those balls, he had a sack of footballs, and he let it out of his grasp for a couple of minutes, and that's what led to this. So clearly, I don't know that Walt Anderson or the NFL officials thought it was that big a deal until all this blew up. So I think they know it now. I think there'll be steps taken to where, it's clearly a very serious security issue. But I don't know. I don't know how this could have happened. He got the directive, hey, let's be aware of these footballs, and then it still got away. So clearly something did go wrong with the NFL operation on this.
Yeah, and that's, sometimes things happen like this where you don't even know there's going to be a problem until there is, sort of like you were saying before, until you actually can catch somebody red-handed. How do you know that they're actually doing something or planning to do something? So this is a situation where the NFL has probably learned a lesson. The NFL has tons of money, has tons of people. If they want to hire a few more to be, football inflation control, I don't know, experts or whatever title you want to give them at any certain game, I guess maybe that's the next step. I don't know. To me, it seems like, maybe this is something that happens more often than we know. I don't know. It just seems like maybe it was because of the conditions, but a guy like Walt Anderson, who's been around the game as long as he has, surely he would have noticed that they were that deflated. But it was raining that day. The conditions were kind of bad. Maybe all of that sort of throws off your sense of what's really going on, and you don't really pay attention to it. But I got to think if a football's really under-deflated, those guys that deal with them all the time, wouldn't they notice? I tend to think it's not happening very much, or those officials would have noticed, would have said something, it would have been taken care of. All right, back to the inbox one last time from Leo. He says, why doesn't a quarterback have his choice on ball inflation? Getting back to one of our original points. Baseball hitters use all sizes of bats. No one handles the ball in football but the offense. Kickers use different footballs. It's a rule I have not heard a logical explanation for at all.
I actually ask a different question. Why does any team get to decide what kind of football they use? How come there's just not footballs that the league provides? You show up and you play with that football.
Yeah.
I don't understand why we got a kicking ball and a throwing ball and each team gets to use their own just because the quarterbacks like it. I got news for the quarterbacks. The world was not made for you. I don't understand this. Kevin Durant does not get to choose what kind of basketball he plays with.
Yeah.
Now golfers get to decide what kind of equipment they're going to use, but in baseball, the umpire shows up with a sack of baseballs and he throws out a baseball and says, "This is one you're going to pitch," and hey, this is one you're going to hit. I don't know why it's not the same in football.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know what? I know that there are a couple basketballs for every NBA game in the arena because lots of times the extra ball that they're not using ends up below my feet at press row. I sometimes use it as a little footstool. So I know there's another one in the arena, but I don't know how many times I've ever seen it brought out. Very rarely, the ball they throw out at the beginning of the game is the ball that they finish the game with. Sometimes in baseball, you'll see a pitcher get a ball that he doesn't like, maybe has a scuff or something on it, he'll kick it back. Sometimes the ump will throw it right back to him and say, no, you're going to use this one. So I think if this is something the NFL really wants to take back control of, it's easy, just do it, change the rule back to what it was initially, I think, before those two quarterbacks got it changed a couple years ago. Then it's all up to the officials. It's under their control. No more Deflate Gates. And be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.